necessary?
I'm not sure. George is looking into making sure that there is no other contingencies. There could be, and anytime you get into an old situation with
Right,
an old building,
exactly.
you never know. I am preparing, there will be a contingency built into this at 10%. So those are not bottom line figures. Even the 46,000 for the stairs, I'll have a 4,600 built in to that for contingency in case something else would have to be replaced. And the water will be the same.
Okay.
Well, you remember those steps from when you were a kid. I've been on council long enough to remember Councilmember Bain introducing legislation to put all the wood in on both those steps and the ones coming down to Grosvenor. And I do know the wood did not cost near what we were, Nancy, do you happen to remember? But
Well, somebody CCC.
CCC,
was
which
around
I
8 or
remember
10.
not realizing
We
that
purchased the
civilian
materials, I
conservation-
believe, and they did it as a project. That's been, what, 15 years?
I bet.
ago?
Probably.
At least.
Probably.
There has been significant repairs on all of those stairs, but I have pictures of the other sets, and they do not require the maintenance right now. I don't see any reason to put money into anything else.
Do they have to be done in concrete?
They don't have to be.
I was
I don't
just
know.
wondering
It
if
would
it could be
reduce
done
the
in-
cost considerably. I would probably need to talk to the architect because of the steepness of the hill. I don't know how they can design it or whether they would have to. It could involve massive cutting into the hillside in order to put those stairs there. I don't really know.
Yeah, I can't imagine how you even get concrete to that area compared to wood.
They'd have to form it primarily the same way it is. I am concerned that the steps are actually too narrow because I didn't like going up and down them yesterday, trust me.
Are they on footers, concrete footers?
I don't know. I can't tell.
That might be the reason why one of the reasons they're falling apart.
They could be. Well, they've been there, and I don't notice any slippage on any part of that hillside. So
The concrete part that they would sit on anyway, so. How about the ones by the middle school that go down to,
the ones from
Grinders?
yeah, I went down through there. That it's beautiful. Other than they were all wood, though. There's almost no concrete involved in that except the walkway. But they are in really good condition. There's a little graffiti on them, but other than that, I didn't notice anything.
The ones going down to Grosvenor are also all wood and are looking really good. I don't know how maintenance costly they've been, but they do look excellent right now.
Yeah, I have not gathered past maintenance cost. I was there at the service garage. I know what it costs us to fix them now and then we have to go clean them off every time it would turn bad weather with the snow. And I can remember all of that, but I don't really have a listed cost of what it costs us to fix and maintain. But the only ones that I see right at the moment are the ones from Fort leading up to Fairview.
Right. I also, do we have any way of estimating what the energy cost savings will be by putting in a boiler? I would think that within, a fairly short number of years, we'd make up the cost of that one.
I heard, as I understood, the way George talked, that within 5 years, we would
Okay,
make up
5
the
years.
difference. But it would take about 5 years.
That's
The gas
what my
cost
question
has
was.
increased considerably anyway.
Simple.
It's about that.
How wide is the right of way there if we have to widen the steps? You were talking about the steps being too narrow as is.
Actually, too narrow this direction. No, it's not that way,
Not widthwise, just doing stepwise.
just stepwise.
Okay.
Those steps can't be more than 6 inches.
Okay. I assumed that they were moving last time I was down there. That's why they looked short. I thought they were just designed that way. They've always been that shape?
Built that way, yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Okay.
There's still more engineering that I need them to look at, but this is very preliminary. We just got the purchase order for the designs.
Okay.
Other questions for Ms. Nye? Melissa, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate your input. Paul,
No input from the public?
Is there any other member of the audience that would like to address the public hearing? Any comments on the community development block grant? Any comments about any other projects you would like the city to consider? Where we really cited these. Seeing none, and seeing no other comments from council members, we call to a closed public hearing.
Yeah, he's behind me.
On to Finance and Personnel, Jim Sands, Chair.
Thank you.
Finance and Personnel Committee is meeting before our special session because we have two ordinances that we're going to read during the special session that require some discussion and clarification. The first ordinance would be 9006, and council members have a copy with their agenda, but they should also have a revised copy that the clerk gave you. We'll be using the revised one, which only, it adds one line to the ordinance. This is an ordinance that has 3 sections. The first section appropriates some money. The second and third sections pretty much move money from one fund to another. Section 1, appropriation 2006 appropriation ordinance 012505 is amended by these appropriations from the general fund. The sum of $4,000 to the recreation fund, $270. The recreation fund has some costs that they've had some donations and some participation by other people. So these are matching funds. So $4,000 is for a dirt track, half of which was paid by Roger Ames. So I'm not quite sure.
It's the warning track on Dalton Field. With the American Legion tournament, they requested that instead of having grass all the way to the outfield, we have a warning track around it so that those unfamiliar with it would do it. So that's what that does.
Okay. So we've already received some money for that. We need to appropriate $4,000 to finish that. Also, Coca-Cola has donated some scoreboards for the area, $9,000 worth of scoreboards. We need to appropriate $1,800. Okay, well,
Yeah, that covers the installation cost of those.
right.
Is that still part of the 4,000?
No, I don't know where that is. Recreation fund is $4,000. There's a $16,000.
Well, some of
Okay,
these,
well, okay, so,
some of these are 500 capital. Other like the warning track, the dirt is it's not a capital expense. It's a 200-300 series. Whereas like one of the things Jim hasn't mentioned yet was we got a grant from the United States Tennis Association for $1,780 to purchase windscreens for the tennis courts. Well, that takes a 50% match. That would be a capital item. The other 2 or 3 grants that we received were 2 of them were from the Ohio Arts Commission for Arts West to put on 2 different productions. One is the Oktoberfest. I think that Carol will probably remember that one better than I as to the amounts. And the other is for the dance performance that's going on over a year with teaching and everything. We also had $1,000 received from the Athens Foundation as match. So we have to upfront most of these costs, but even if we got the money first, we'd have to appropriate the funds to spend it anyway. So that's more of the reasoning in the how we got to the 4 and the 16,000.
okay. So the 16,000 is a combination of several events, both at the West State Ball Fields and some events at Arts West. And then we have the 2,500 to the general fund, transaction cost 300 that I don't, was that included in what you were just speaking of?
No, that's the law director.
Oh, this is a law director, I'm just not reading my notes
You wanted
over here.
2,500
This is
for
2,500
outside.
for professional services in the law
Right.
director's office, I'm sorry. The clerk's notes were very clear, I just was looking in the wrong place. Okay,
They try to help us look good, but
Yeah.
they just don't.
and then we've talked about recently payments that the city receives funds and then makes payments to the school board for monies that we have collected. So for 2006, from the TIF funds that will be collected during the calendar year, we would appropriate $249,000 and some change to the Athens City Schools for their share of those TIF funds, and approximately $20,000 for the 2006 share of the Union Street Apartments, the Station Apartments, Station Street Apartments. And this would be taxes that were paid in for 2005, but paid in 2006. Okay. So those are the appropriations that we're dealing with. Are there any questions there? Paul, did you have a question?
What would be nice is get a written down breakdown sometime of this, because I got lost along the way here when you started talking about
Yeah.
it.
Well, I did too, even with
Okay.
notes from,
I'll put that in the committee minutes.
Okay,
so, okay, it'll be in the committee report.
okay.
Then, section 2, we're moving some funds around. The bulk of section 2, there are a lot of small amounts from general fund, transaction cost $300, $280, $560. Those are all with regards to cell phones. These funds have been in payroll class funds, and we're going to be moving them.
Actually, it's just the other
It's
way
the opposite.
around.
These funds have been in telephone,
I don't know why.
a special telephone fund. We're going to move them to payroll. So we'll talk about that in a moment. We have one large amount, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down, $96,083 from the auditors. Auditors email to me that's includes $75,000 for internal service costs. Again, we're moving those. Those have been appropriated. They were in an inappropriate
Inappropriate appropriation.
appropriation. They were in the wrong fund. On the section 3, we're simply moving them to the correct fund. The correction that you have in your hand should add a line, which would be the second line, $11,000. This is money for a document scanning equipment in the auditor's office.
Yeah.
Auditor,
That should be a TC 500, because it's a server that will store all the images, documents that are imaged. So that should be a TC 500.
Instead of 300.
But it goes
Okay,
from
so
the,
we
oh,
move-
yeah.
But
we're-
you're
yeah.
reducing the
You're
300. You're right.
Okay, yeah, section 3 has
So we're-
TC 500.
Okay, we do have it right on.
Oh.
so it's on the back.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything else is cell phone. What has happened is, until recently, the city has provided and paid for cell phones for its employees on the recommendation of the state auditor, who was just here in the city auditor's office. What we have done is, did we give them their current cell phones or tell them to buy new cell phones?
No, what not me exactly, but the city, took back all the cell phones that we paid for, and now they are given an allowance to purchase their own cell phone. It's for the IRS. This came through our auditors, but it's really an IRS regulation that having a cell phone is considered a taxable fringe benefit. And if we furnish phones, then they have to keep a phone log and keep track of every call they make, and and then pay for personal calls, and it's a lot of bookkeeping. And so what we've done is they purchase their own phone, which they can use whenever they want, and we give them an appropriate allowance for the amount of time they use it for city business, and then it gets taxed. It's on their paycheck. So these are the amounts. We give them an allowance each month. On each paycheck, actually, 24 pays.
So this whole section 2 is taking funds that have been appropriated, and we're going to be changing them to other accounts in section 3. So you'll see that all of the cell phone numbers that we talked about have gone from transaction class 300, which was the phone class, over to the payroll class. And the larger sums have also been moved to appropriate funds for the expenditure of those funds. Nancy?
Could the mayor or Kathy give us a upper and lower limit on what the
Cell phone allowances.
appropriate, as she said, appropriate amounts are? What's the highest and what's the lowest? You don't have to tell me who it associates with. I just wanted a ballpark.
Almost all of them are $40 a month.
40 a month?
If someone, I've left it open that if 2 cases. One is if someone does have a high usage and that goes over, we have the ability to raise that to cover the actual cost, and it's reviewable on a 3-month basis. The other thing is that we've shortened the list of people that we're requiring to have cell phones, i.e. they get an allowance. But if an employee wants to use their own, it's not required, but does use it for city business, that could be a reimbursable expense. Right now, Kathy and I have talked about 50 cents, because if you used a payphone, it'd be 50 cents. So if you're making a call for the city on your own personal phone, if you want to submit it for reimbursement, you're allowed to. Same as travel or other types of common expenses. This will get us in compliance with the IRS from the standpoint of what is taxable benefits versus non-taxable.
So we'll doing this, we'll also have a PERS component and a longevity component, correct?
No.
No?
As I recall, is having this type of fringe benefit is not subject to public employees retirement system, nor is it subject to the longevity, because it's not an amount of base pay.
So the base pay is listed and then phone allowances down here?
I don't think it does PERS, does it?
So we don't have them, so not that we need them.
Police and fire pension either.
Just like
Oh, yeah, that was the one I was
university-
most concerned
When the
about.
university used to have that health insurance, they put the 2,000 down there back in the old days.
Yeah, now they have what they take out down there,
Right. That was not
like 17%.
countable toward PERS or.
Okay, I understand that. Thank you.
Again, we'll read this tonight. We'll read it for the second time next week. In the meantime, the clerk will give us each member a breakdown,
Okay.
notes similar to the ones that I had trouble with. Any other questions or comments about this particular ordinance? The second ordinance that we'll be discussing, we'll be reading tonight, and actually we've been asked to suspend on this ordinance, is ordinance,
Yeah. We're gonna single page.
excuse me, 9106. 9106. And this is a ordinance authorizing the payment of an expense prior to auditor certification declaring an emergency. We're doing some work, a lot of work, around the middle school in the High Street area. While the contractor, York Paving, was working there, our overseer saw some work that it was only logical that it be done now. And so the work has been done. We need to pay the contractor. The amount is $20,500, which is over the $3,000 limit, obviously. But also, the auditor's office, this has happened so quickly, they've not had a chance to certify the availability of those funds. They're asking us to approve this payment, given the certification by the auditor's office, so it can be done expeditiously. That's the point of this ordinance. Is that correct?
I think so, unless somebody has any questions. If you understand that if we get an invoice for work already performed, we can certify it with a then and now certificate if it's $3,000 or less in our office, if the funds are there. These funds are there, they've been appropriated, but as Jim said, they have a project, they had a contract going with York Paving and had asked them to do some additional work that was out of the scope of the original contract, which we already had a PO for. And so the PO came after the fact, after the work, and because it's over $3,000, council has to approve payment of that bill. As I said, the money is there, it's been appropriated in the street fund, the work needed to be done, and so they want to, but I can't really sign off on that without council approval for that amount. So, and I asked that it be suspended tonight because the work was done at least a month ago. We do a fair amount of work with York Paving, and I just think it's appropriate to go ahead and pay our bill.
So if the funds have already been appropriated, is that money that was in as contingency or something? If it's over and beyond the scope of the contract, was it part of what we had approved as a contingency in the overall scope of work for street paving and repairs during the summer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Exactly.
But the only difference is they didn't write a contract or write a purchase order before they had the work done. If they'd have written the purchase order, we wouldn't be here.
Got it.
Paul, did you have a question?
In particular, what work was this?
It was the grinding, because the grinding machine was in to do High Street and everything by BW3 rings, and then the repaving of that. That's what the work was.
Okay, so that was an extra section, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay.
But it wasn't in the scope of work for the issue 2, because the issue 2 did not have that area, and we had to modify the whole issue 2 grant agreement. So we didn't put it in the contract, but nobody remembered to file a purchase order. So
Okay.
do this.
So those are the two ordinances we'll be meeting tonight. And Paul, did you have something?
In terms of miscellaneous, really the whole thing is I wanted to. We had the draft from the Clean Committee in terms of trying to get a litter control officer, and I know Nancy and I have been looking at the books trying to figure out where the money comes from, or we can get money to fund something like this. The latest thing I got from Ray, dated that says 7/06. That doesn't say what day, but some kind of last week. We're about. The net revenue for the solid waste and recycling, our garbage fund, is about $16,000 according to him. So really what I want people to think about is what to do about putting a litter control officer, a paying one. If you look at the recommendation of the Clean Committee, they talk about adding $1 onto the recycling fee. I know we increased the rates, garbage rates, by 50 cents, I think, last 4 months ago, I guess it was. And I think the dialogue at that time is that would not be sufficient. So the alternative would be to increase the rates again. But we're going to play around with the billing a little bit more before we recommend doing that. Go ahead.
I think given the problems with billing and the handhelds and all of that, that it would only be fair to the citizens to make sure that we're billing accurately now before we mess with the rates.
I agree.
But on the other hand, there's some urgency with respect to solid waste, with respect to litter, so The clean committee, to me, seems like it made a pretty decent recommendation. A separate line item, litter control, for $1 a month from each recycling user, which would get commercial and residential in the same group. As it stands right now, if the people from the apartment building at the T of Stewart and Mill create a litter problem, it won't be they won't be paying for the enforcement, which I guess was why the Clean Committee came up with the strategy that they did. So I can understand what you're saying. I think that you can see that a purchase order wasn't filed. I mean, you know that there's sickness in the service safety directors. I mean, there's personnel issues going on. And I just think that a lot of work has fallen on Ray, and it's easy to say that I would like to see it done, all those things resolved, but I personally think that it would be fairer and more equitable to have each and every unit pay $1 a month, $12 a year.
We just increased the garbage rates to cover this though, and just increased or created
50
a
cents.
charge for the brush pickup. I just
We
feel.
haven't-
We haven't done a charge.
We haven't done that,
No.
okay.
We have
Because
still,
people are coming up to me and are really upset about that one, and it just seems like we should get the billing working right and see where we stand before we raise any other rates.
It'll probably be the end of the year before that happens, and then you'd have to hire the litter officer, so it'll be a whole academic year that will pass before it's taken care of. I don't know why people would complain about higher garbage rates. I can just say that if you compare it, and I usually do it with my class, any place else in the state, if you add garbage and recycling together, it's still lower than any other place I've heard of. And that would be roughly 250 students, by no means a good sample, but it's much lower than, say, Mount Vernon, where it's $20 each month.
However, it is what it is, and so any increase is surprising. And so we need to have a fuller discussion probably, as Paul pointed out.
yeah, I don't expect to jump on it right this committee meeting.
I wish you would, because I think it would be better to get the person on staff before.
Before September, I know.
No, not before September. That's totally unrealistic on my part, but before the snow flies.
Okay,
Should we do it under city services though?
It's not, it's his.
actually, I was thinking of scheduling an environment committee, but I held off for a little bit. And the idea is really this falls under finance, which I'm also part of the committee, so that's why I'm bringing it up, because it looks that we have to play around with the bills if we're going to do it.
Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Next
but
week,
it's not.
next week.
You want to have further discussion on this next committee?
Well, what will you bring to bear that we don't know right now that we can, I mean, it's either you think we should do it now or we should wait until later. And
I think it should be on an agenda so those that are really interested can be here.
It's a fairly weighty issue.
Okay.
well, then could we read it for the first time afterwards, next time? I mean, it seems to me that we finally got consensus that we need this officer, and, you know, now we're going to miss the whole educational opportunity in fall, as it is,
As it is.
as it is.
I would, I'd rather see a committee meeting first before we do a reading. I mean,
With the
that's just-
environmental committee meeting?
or finance personnel. I think it falls under that more than environment.
Well, typically, when we put a charge on, it's been out of the environmental committee or the city services committee, so it should be yours. Up to you.
Your city services.
No, it's not, you have garbage. It's
Okay.
yours.
So, shall we
Next week.
work this out for next week?
You can be thinking
So it'll
about it.
be on the agenda.
See
Okay.
if the people really care enough about solid waste to spend $12 a year. I mean, enough about litter control to spend $12 a year.
Okay.
I'd like to see if there's anybody out there that really is that worried about two six-packs. Which may end up on the street if we're not careful.
Any other miscellaneous?
Just so I'm clear, the proposal is $1 more for the onto the recycling fee.
No, it's, I don't
Just a
think we should
dollar,
put
just
just
a
a
whole line
dollar
item,
more.
$1 for litter control.
The recycling
Sure.
billing unit.
Actually, the utilities.
The
It would end up
garbage
to be
and sewage.
a $1 fee for a litter control officer
But it
per
would be-
month.
I'd like, you can't increase it with recycling, it should be a separate
I thought
line.
that's fine.
We've got lots of lines on the bill.
Yeah, it would just be another line saying this is what this is the cost of
That's
litter.
what it's, okay.
Litter
Okay.
control officer.
It'll say that litter
Well,
control officer.
We hope.
Awesome.
And if it doesn't work, we can always take it off and get rid of the litter control officer. That would be a first. Something going backwards.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
think it would be going backwards
done.
to do this.
Oh, we're not done.
No,
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
One of the things that was discussed in the conversation with council when this was brought up several months ago, it was kind of a preliminary report from Clean. There was some discussion at the time also about uptown and the sidewalk sweeper thing and people in the uptown franchise area paying into that equipment and the person who would run it. And one possibility that was discussed was that the litter control officer part-time be doing enforcement in the neighborhoods and part-time be actually cleaning up litter uptown. And I would like in our discussion to also talk about that as part of the funding and responsibilities.
I guess that I would like to know if that's really part of the clean
Well,
recommendation.
that's another reason we need to have it on the agenda. So
But didn't we get the report last week?
Yes.
we-
So those of us
Yeah,
read it.
but we haven't-
Yeah, my intention was to put an environment committee on tonight, but the fact is that Bojinka's not here and she's part of my committee, so
You did listen.
Okay.
I do listen.
I said you had to wait for Bajinka.
Well,
Now, Mr. President, I think we're done.
Ready to roll.
Well, seeing finance and personnel complete, the next item on our agenda is a special session, and for those that do not realize that special sessions are somewhat of an abbreviated agenda. Ordinances for second reading. Ordinance 8206, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 13, General Offenses, Chapter 13.04, Offenses Against Public Peace, Section 13.04.10, Unnecessary Noise.
Mr. President, could I
Member
just say
Sands.
something? I got a call from a resident of Grosvenor Street, actually, who was representing several people in the neighborhood regarding firecrackers going on, not just 4th of July, but really since warm weather has started, and they're continuing weeknights, weekends, afternoons. She's talked to the police officers. It's very difficult for them to come and locate who's doing that. It's difficult for anybody, but it's another part of the noise and nuisance in the neighborhoods which our citizens are concerned about. I wanted to raise that with this discussion right now.
They should quit it. Ordinance 8306, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into lease agreements for storage space and parking at the Armory. Member Wild.
question, so how many spaces are being rented right now? Do you know offhand?
No, it's just on the left-hand side as you look at it. I don't know how many of them are actually leased.
And,
Find out tomorrow.
and what's on the back end? Is that ours or somebody else's?
Back end's pretty much all the alley. You might be able to put a car in between, but I wouldn't recommend it as a parking space because of the traffic in the alley. So I'd do it on the right-hand side between the Armory and the Family Dollar.
Okay, well, I took a walk back there and I'm looking at cars that are parking perpendicular in the back, and it has a numbered system saying, I see like 1 and 3, some chain going along the back. This would be the north side. So it's not actually in the alley, but it's where the parking lot is to the west of the Armory. Are those ours or somebody else's?
Right behind the Armory?
Right, right where the parking lot is by the Armory. Essentially,
That could be all right. I mean, I'd have to check.
okay.
Could you
So I
bring
can
us
find
back
out
maybe
tomorrow and let you know.
a little diagram saying how many you have
Sure.
in both places? You said you raised the rate to 40 last week,
They go up, yeah, they went up July 1.
and that's commensurate with with what we're paying in the Presbyterian law?
No, it's a lower rate than what's at the Presbyterian lot by quite a bit.
Okay.
Okay.
Other comments? Ordinance 8506, an ordinance creating an unclaimed monies fund and establishing guidelines. Ordinance 8706, an ordinance closing a portion of Court, Union, High, and Washington Streets on Saturday, August 12, 2006 for the King Midget Jamboree. Member Flowers.
Mr. President, I move we amend ordinance 8706.
Second.
The reason for the amendment, and I want to make sure that I'm getting this correct, some of the members of the King Midget Car Club are here. The amendment is to change the times on the street closing, and also to say that Court Street doesn't need to be closed down at all. Is that correct? Won't need Court Street at all. And to change the times from, instead of 1 to 4 p.m., from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., as they'll be using, doing their test of High Street from 12 to 2, so an hour each way on the street closings. That's the reason for the amendment, Paul.
So section 1's part A, you want to just delete the Court Street part and change the hours.
Right, delete the Court Street part and change from it says 1 to 4 and change it from 11 to 3.
And the same thing with section B,
Correct, on
eliminate
the
Court
part.
Street. Okay. Just so I got it straight.
Sure.
Other comments
you.
on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment as stated?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been amended.
Mr. President, I move we suspend the rules on ordinance 8706.
Second.
The reason for the suspension is because we won't have enough time before recess to read all 3 readings for this to go through, so I'd like us to go ahead and vote on it tonight if we can.
Other comments on suspension of the rules only? All those in favor of suspending the rules on ordinance 8706?
Aye.
Those opposed? The rules have been suspended.
Oh, yeah.
One more.
Mr. President, I move we adopt ordinance 8706.
Second.
Oh, the reason for the, sorry, the reason for the adoption of the amendment is for the reasons of the suspending the rules, so we won't have enough time to read it through all 3 readings. Hopefully we can vote on it tonight.
And it's a nice little event that we do ever periodically.
And the street will be closed, I assume? I mean, finished, I should
Yes,
say.
yeah, that was discussed before we even put it up for first reading.
Okay. And there was at one point some discussion about a sign.
Right, they're here tonight, we're all talking about that in committee meeting.
Okay, just wanted to know.
If anyone would like to speak to this ordinance, I think now would be the time to do it. Wasn't that different discussion?
No,
in committee?
it's for the sign, it's not about the street.
Okay.
We'll wait till committee to discuss.
All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 8706?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Now on to ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 8806, an ordinance closing a portion of Union Street from Court Street to College Street on Friday, September 1st, 06 for an Ohio University pep rally. Member Flowers.
Mr. President, this is an ordinance, as you stated, to close the street, to close Union Street during the Friday of move-in weekend. After discussing it in length during committee meeting a couple of weeks ago, it was discussed, just wanted to be sure that there was communication going on between the Athens Police Department and the OU Police Department as far as staffing and who would and wouldn't be patrolling and at what times, and if it would be a problem for either department. Chad's here tonight if we have any questions for him directly. But I will state that I've been in communication with Chad, and he has discussed the event and everything with OUPD, and they see no problem with it and wouldn't have a problem in providing officers to patrol. And also stated that Friday night wasn't a big deal to them as far as closing the street down because they were more concerned with Saturday morning when the second-year students would be moving into some of the uptown dorms. But Friday evening wasn't a problem for them. That's Chief Matthews from OUPD. And I also believe that Chief Mayer from Athens Police Department, after discussing this with Chief Matthews, was also had some concerns about staffing. I think that after their communication that he may be okay and comfortable with the fact that OUPD will be helping with staffing the street closing. I don't know if the mayor had anything to add in addition to the street closing, or if...
No, I mean, it's just normally on the move-in weekend, we have extra staff out anyway, because it's, all of a sudden you have a big influx of people, and many of them have never, been here on their own, and you have to have a good-sized police presence out that weekend. It sets the tone for fall quarter.
Were there other comments for ordinance 8806? Ordinance 8906, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 5 Public Utilities, Chapter 5.03, Water Regulations. Member Bain. 89.
Change to.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to note that we have a newer revised 08906 compared to the one that was in the initial packet. And the main thing that we're doing here is increasing the amount of bill charged to those areas outside of the city from 10% to 20%. And that's what the purpose is here. Checked it all through, and there it is.
Other comments? Ordinance 9006, an ordinance amending the 2006 appropriation ordinance. Member Sands, you going to explain this again?
Yeah. Mr. President, we did talk about this ordinance. Has 3 sections. The first section appropriates some funds to several areas of the recreation fund, some money for professional services in the law director's office, makes payments from the TIF fund and from, I can never remember the name of this, Athens Station Apartments, funds that the city collects and then passes on to the school, Athens City Schools. Section 2 decreases funds in about 15 accounts, and Section 3 then moves all of those funds to newer funds where the money can be better appropriately.
Are there other comments on ordinance 90? Ordinance 9106, an ordinance authorizing the payment of an expense prior to auditor certification and declaring an emergency. Member Sands.
Mr. President, I move that we consider ordinance 9106 under suspension of the rules.
Second.
As the auditor has commented earlier, the work that this ordinance is speaking to was completed about a month ago, and we should, when possible, pay our bills in a timely fashion.
Other comments on ordinance 91, suspension only. All those in favor of suspending the rules on 9106?
Aye.
Opposed? The rules have been suspended.
Mr. President, I move adoption of ordinance 9106. This ordinance authorizes the payment of $20,500 to York Paving for some work that they did in addition to the work they were contracted to do around the middle school. And it's necessary that we pass an ordinance because of the sum is larger than the auditor's office can approve on their own.
Other comments? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 9106?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Having addressed all items on tonight's agenda, this special session of council is adjourned. On the City Services Committee, Chair Nancy Bain.
Mr. President, I'm passing out a sheet from, the first thing on my agenda concerns the 130 request for a revocable license. My only comment is I hope it's not my job to read about revocable licenses. One of my most unfavorite things, but here we are.
Thank you.
I don't know, here's the one, this is the one that was in the packet. I'll read you the letter from Steve and we can take a look at it.
Is this 3 Mary Street right here?
Yeah, I think so.
That's over.
Yeah, close enough.
Close enough. Here. This is a letter from Steve Pearson on the 6th of June. Attached are the appellant's documents in support of a request to allow parking on the city right-of-way at the referenced address. This request is necessary in order to meet the parking requirements associated with the proposed use. The structure has to this time been owner-occupied, where the original permit was for construction of a 2-family dwelling. The building was constructed in such a manner but the second unit has never been occupied. At the time of approval for construction in 1995, the parking requirement was 1.5 parking spaces per unit. The requirement is now a minimum of 2 per unit or 1 per permitted occupant. The original permit to construct was issued for a 2-family dwelling unit and issued on the 21st of March 1995 when the area in question was still zoned R2. On April 1, 1996, I issued a cease and desist order based on the fact that the district designation had changed from R2 to R1 and construction progress was lacking. On September 16th, the Board of Zoning Appeals overturned my order, and the appellant was allowed to continue with the constructions. I've attached copies of the permit with parking as proposed, cease and desist letters, BZA minutes, and BZA resolution. Please be aware that the area proposed for parking will only accommodate 3 vehicles in width, but the zoning district R1 permits stacking. The use proposed is duplex rental with 1 tenant per unit in one unit and 1 in the other. So some of you may have this and others of you may not. And we have Central Avenue right-of-way here, which is a pretty good sized right-of-way by the looks of things. I have some pictures. I'm almost inclined at this point to go out and look at it to try a field trip here, because the map I showed you, which is included in the packet from Steve, I guess it's from the zoning board, has the structure 30 by sitting on lot 358 with a 73-foot backyard. And I guess I don't understand. Maybe we could go out and have Mr. Freed explain to us why he needs the parking in the front yard, because I can't see. Take a look at this particular, there's the picture. Paul took pictures for me. We were out doing some other right-of-way stuff. And so, so that's the specific case. I know Mr. Freed is in the audience, but you know, I think it might be better for us to just go look at it, because I'm inclined to think that with our right-of-way on 3rd Street, we gotta be careful what we do in some ways, because we've found we have to use it. Yes, sir?
Okay, I would point out, when you're looking at those pictures, that's looking at the front of the lot, and the lot drops off quite quickly. The house actually that you're looking at is a log cabin, and really all you can see is the roof, for the most part, the green roof, because it drops down that fast. It's a ravine behind there.
So parking in back is pretty much an
Well,
impossibility.
it's going on all over the city, but I mean, I just think giving the parking in the front setback is also.
I would also point out that I was on zoning board of appeals when this happened, and I voted against making it a duplex. So I have a history with this already.
So why can't parking go on lot 359? Mr. Freed, do you have an answer for that? 359, the one next to it?
Sir, if we could ask you
Yeah,
to
come
come
on
up
up
to the
and take a look.
microphone so
We're gonna
everybody
grill you
can
now.
hear. No,
We're else
we're not.
No, I'm gonna grill, I'm sure.
No, you're not.
There's
We're gonna treat
that was
each
in
other
the
with
packet, and I passed it out so people could understand. This is Mr. Freed, who lives on Longview. It doesn't matter, somewhere outside the city.
And if you're going to speak,
You can speak over there at the microphone.
Identify yourself and your address and everything.
And I'm gonna pass around the, if I haven't already, the
No.
pictures.
Oh, it's already going around.
It's already going around, yeah.
My name is Don Freed, and I own the property at 130 Central Avenue. It's my residence. And the question was, why can I not use parking on lot 359? From the street back to where the property drops off at a pretty steep angle is, well, it's not the property, it's city property. So I'd have to do a lot of filling to be able to build that up level to make a parking area there. That right away, the actual street, Central Avenue, the pavement is to the far west side of the city right of way, so there's quite a distance between the pavement and where my property line actually starts, which is actually down over the hill. So that's
Sounds like my
why
house.
I had asked for the
Okay.
permit.
Can you, did everybody get a chance to look at the pictures?
I guess my one question here is, where it says actual paved street, which is drawn in on Central Avenue, is that pretty much to scale? Is that how small the street is compared to the right-of-way? You know, we've got that in quite a few different areas in the city. It's really shocking that, you know, the
Well, it's
right-of-ways
shocking.
are that
Where
big, but
the disconnect in some cases between the location of the right of way
And
and
the
the
street.
placement of the street
Yeah.
has one of those I'm going to try and grab the mayor and talk about in a minute.
One of the reasons why I took the pictures, it does jog over. If you and actually Central takes two jogs. I mean, if you look at Central, the main drag that stops at Second, then you realize Central actually moves over to, I guess that would be to the east, and then continues. And then at this point, it also moves back over to the west from going between Second and Mary Street. So it's one of these roads that have, and there's really no curb after you get past Second. So there's kind of a nebulous thing of where things start or stop. I'm aware of the fact you've been filling this in for a long time too. So you've actually been filling in city property all these years. Is that the case?
No, actually, it's down, the person that I bought the property from actually did the filling, Jim Tom, some years ago, back in the 80s.
So that's not your backhoe that I see there every couple of years?
That is my background.
Okay.
And I was asked to move that
So,
by
yeah.
council or
Something
code
over.
office.
Yeah.
That has been moved. I had it there recently, hoping to put this parking area in. I didn't know how long it would take to get permit to do so.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Freed, is there a chance that you'll be building a structure on lot 359 sometime in the future?
No, I actually just had lot 358, 359, and 360 legally combined, so it's all one lot now, and there's no chance that I could
Okay.
build on that property now.
What about 361? Is that yours also?
No, it isn't. That's Mr.
6
Brooks.
days over.
Oh, I see, because it's got the, I didn't see the little flag. Okay.
Okay. So you have that as a duplex right now? You're renting it?
Yes.
And there's 3 people total in it?
No.
3 people would be in it. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
One of the things that Steve said and was that I thought was fairly important was that the 3 places in the front aren't adequate right now to the width. Is that correct?
They're not adequate.
Adequate to the width of 3 cars, or maybe it's to the width of the legally required. I have to go
Right.
back and
I think that's what he means.
That's what he
It's
means?
we require,
if we required 6
For width.
spaces, then
Right.
you wouldn't have room. Now, is that what you get then too? Okay.
But the question arises then is how, so you could stack them 25 feet in? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the photos you took have this kind of humped up area. Is that going to, would that stay in your proposal, Mr. Freed?
I believe you're talking about the
I don't know if it's a pile of dirt.
topsoil, which I plan to spread after I did.
Okay. So you wouldn't have 2 deep cars in the front yard, would you? You wouldn't have 2 cars deep in the front yard if you got, if by some slip of fate you had 6 people in there, because a duplex, you theoretically. I don't know what it's rented from.
I have plans to have 1 person in the lower floor apartment.
And 2 in the upper. But you're legally permitted for 3 and 8, aren't you? So,
So technically, is the 126 apartment duplex of yours, are they parking the city right away then too?
As far as I know, yeah.
Okay, and you've applied for that as well?
No, that's been grandfathered in. That house was originally built in the 50s or 60s. And we went through that some years ago. And those cars park just as they do on most city streets.
I'm not sure if use of right of way is grandfathered in, is it?
I have no idea. I think that would be subject to. So, if you were granted the revocable license, Mr. Freed, what kind of surface would you put on this?
Whatever the city requires.
Okay.
Mr. Hensley suggested just limestone because being revocable, the city might decide to take it up at any point.
Thank you. Anybody else questions?
I need to look.
You think we need to look?
Well, I do.
Okay, so could we go next week during, just before the meeting at 5:45, 7, I mean? You think we'd get down there and get back? Is that possible? Debbie, could you arrange it for us? You look like, we'll be down there next week. At about 5:45, 7 o'clock. Everybody's
Unless you're cooking.
What?
Monday.
Next Monday.
There'll be regular meetings, so we'll have to hustle back. So we won't be able to walk down in the ravine. Ah, shucks.
So that's poison ivy every weekend.
Yeah, I know, that's what I figured, those poison ivy. Thank you, Mr. Freed, we'll see you next week. That is basically the end of my meeting for now.
All done?
All done.
Okay, Transportation Committee will now meet. First item, and the only item that I have on the agenda tonight, is for the King Midget Car Club. Mrs. Hart is here today from the Athens County Visitation Bureau, Conservation Visitation Bureau, just to give us a better idea as to what the car club's wanting as far as their sign proposal, and just erecting a sign here in the city, and kind of just give us a general overview of what they are proposing.
Thank you, Council, for allowing me to come and speak on behalf of the King Midget Car Club. In January, I was approached by Lee Seats. Actually, I received an email from him asking if it would be all right if the King Midget Car Club gave the city a sign indicating that it was the home of the King Midget car. And I believe it was brought to council once before. Council member Flowers had indicated it was presented to council. What I was asked was that it was presented as a gift, and that for council to decide on the size of the sign and the placement of the sign. It was brought to council that could possibly be placed at the entrance of the far end of East State Street, coming in from where Pepsi is, or possibly as you come off the exit ramp to East State Street. There's other options if the council decides differently. It was never really discussed on the size of the sign. From the photos I have and from the illustrations that he'd sent me, I don't know if you've received these or not.
Are those ones that you sent to me a while ago?
Yeah.
Okay, I believe
Did
those
you
got
see that?
emailed out to council.
Do you want to see?
Approximately, the sign would be a wooden sign created by one of their members, and it'll be a approximate size of that sign looks to be about 3 by 5.
Okay.
And it was discussed about upkeep that members.
Right, I think, when we discussed it before, some of the members were concerned about who would, if it was a wooden sign, who would paint it and things like that on a, need-to basis. It was also brought to my attention within the past couple of weeks about possibly even doing this as an Ohio historical marker. I don't know if that would necessarily replace the sign that the club is wanting to erect, but maybe be an addition to that sign as well. But still leaves us at the placement issue and where we think it would be best placed, or where we would be comfortable in placing a sign like that. So, I mean, is it something that we just want to discuss more, or? I mean, unfortunately, I don't think that we'll be able to get it up before this year's event. I don't think with time.
Could possibly it be if they decide this evening on where placement would be.
Sure.
And we have a month to do that. It would be good if we could get it approved and for them to have it erected by the time they get here in August.
Jim?
I guess I didn't understand that council was being asked to make to decide where it was going to go. I mean, ultimately, we decide if the placement, we're going to vote on it, but we get to choose where it would go?
I think, well, if it would be, as it is a gift to council, they're wanting to present it to council, I think that we would sort of be in our hands to say where would be appropriate.
Well, fine. So I really hadn't given thought to where it would go, so I need a little bit of time to think about that. But I feel better about the city receiving it as a gift, knowing that we're going to be the one to take care of it. If it's given to us, then we accept it, knowing that we have to, that we're accepting the maintenance also. And so I think it's a very possible thing. I certainly wouldn't be ready to vote on it tonight or maybe even next week, but.
Bill?
Amy, I fell in love with king midgets a number of years ago when I became friends with somebody that bought a piece of property owned by Claude Dry many years ago down on the Ohio River. And if I remember some of the history correctly, was the king midget not produced over on Stimson Avenue and back pretty much where APCO is now? Is that the building that produced the king midget? So I'm not too sure if there's room and the administration is interested that possibly coming in on Stimson Avenue, if there's room, would not be a good place close to where the king midget was manufactured. I thought we were going to talk a little bit more about the festival or the event coming up. I think it really is such a neat event, going back to what is truly the history and of Athens. It's such a quintessential Athenian thing. Nobody else can do a king midget rally going up the street that tested whether the king midget car should be sold or not, you know, whether it made it up High Street or not. So I think it's a great idea. But there's a lot that goes into it, and I think really the administration needs to speak to it as to how they feel about it also.
What exactly, what council action is required?
Well, if it's a gift,
We have to accept.
we just have to
Just
accept
accept the
it
gift.
as a gift.
And that's pretty easy to do. I guess our concerns at one point was, okay, make sure it stays pretty in terms of what Jim is saying, maintenance-wise, you know. And the question is, do we maintain it? And as a wood sign, it's a high-maintenance sign.
If we accept it as a gift, do we still have, is imperative that we accept responsibility for the maintenance? I believe that it's already been discussed that if the sign was erected, that the King Midget Car Club would be responsible for the maintenance of it, even if it is a gift to council.
Yeah.
In their appreciation, also taking care of the sign.
And the problem would be if that could happen, then we would take responsibility as a city. But I think to initially accept the gift with them saying that they will keep it up. But there are problems. For example, we own a mural on Stimson Avenue that has some cracking and so forth, and they had agreed to repair that, but now they can't repair it. The only thing they could do would be to paint it over. So, you know, things do happen, so we have to go into it with the clear understanding that we could indeed end up maintaining it. But I certainly think initially to accept the idea that King Midget Club would try to maintain it, that seems worthy. I would like to see us do this. We've been talking about it for a long time, and it seems to me that we should be able to reach some kind of resolution and move on it.
I have no problem accepting it. The question is, again, where? I think the original question I was thinking is, you know, we're talking about what's the appropriate place and again, maintenance, but if, you know.
Well, with the maintenance question, someone answered in the placement. I mean, I thought that a good idea was placing it where, you know, the actual factory was, where, you know, these cars were being built, would be a good idea. And down on Stimson Avenue, as it is an entry point also into Athens, that maybe a sign there, you know, is a good idea. So I think that if we were to go ahead and accept this as a gift, then we could try it out. I mean, if it's a gift to council, then we'd also have the authority to maybe replace it or move it if it wasn't working, or
give it back.
Okay.
I wonder, Mary Abel, if there's space by the entryway stuff that's there on Stimson Avenue, the city signage and the millstones and in that area.
Yeah, but Stimson is where we have one of the entry signs. I haven't seen the sign, so I don't know. Everybody suggested does. It's council's sign out here.
3 by 5.
3 by 5,
It's
and-
not huge.
Right, and, you know, in reading the 18 pages of the sign ordinance, I mean, I'm assuming sign ordinance would still apply if we accept it as a gift, or?
We don't follow any of our own ordinances.
Sorry, I read this
Well,
one.
according to Steve Pearson, that because it's a gift, there is no regulations or any sign permit or sign ordinances that need to be followed. I spoke to him back in January.
Right now, it's something that we also had discussed. I just was,
So we can just say thank you and it can get put up in time for the event.
is council comfortable with that?
Has it been made?
I know that, has it been made or started or?
No, they're waiting.
Do we have any idea how long it might take to, I mean, I can't imagine it taking too long. I mean, the event's in August.
Right. I think if the council decides this evening that they will accept it, they will go ahead and make the sign and try to have it here by the date of the event.
Well, if nothing else, I mean, we could get it put up for this year, you know, so they, you know, they're coming back. It's my understanding you guys haven't done this for a couple of years, is that right?
60th anniversary.
This is the 60th, so, you know, it's a big year for them, and having a sign might not be a bad idea.
Okay. So let's put it up for reading then, I guess.
So, okay, for next week then? We'll put it up for reading next week?
Can you just do a resolution to accept the gift? Can we do a one reading resolution next week?
Yeah. I would think.
Is council comfortable with that, doing a one reading resolution next week to accept this sign?
What would be the basis that would make this different from, let's say, the next group comes along and says they want to make this Boy Scout City USA a wooden sign? I mean, what's the basis? There's only one King Midget, but that isn't going to, I mean, from a municipality side, you have to tell me what you're going to do.
I mean, that for me, I mean, this is the home of the King Midget. This isn't the home of the Boy Scouts. I mean, this is the home of...
Well, it sure is.
Well, not of the Boy Scouts. I mean, this is the home of the King Midget.
Pack
The King Midget Car Club. I mean, I think that we take this as a case-by-case sort of thing, and I think that if council's comfortable in accepting a gift of sign of, you know, the stature, you know, it's King Midget Car Club, 60th anniversary. I mean, that this is different than a Boy Scouts.
It's going to be on steel poles,
It looks
like wooden.
poles.
wooden poles, you know?
Wooden sign.
The concrete.
Is it going to be how will it be in compatibility with the existing roller through or whatever it is, grinder stone and all the rest? Yeah.
How's it going to,
Is it going to go in front of it
does it need to be like color coordinated
or
or?
next to it?
You can come down.
I mean, it's our decision, you know, it's our gift to do with it.
It's where's it going to be? I mean, I think that we might want to ask somebody who does design, like an architect, for a little bit of advice. Maybe $10 worth, 10 minutes worth. Oh no, 2 minutes worth.
2 minutes worth of advice.
Just like where it would go. What?
Is that going to make or break you on this, if it's a different kind of sign?
You've got 6 months. I just want to. I just, you know, I
About
just think
5
it's-
at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
I learned a
so,
long time ago when you can count to 4. Shut up.
It's just there's.
That's a poli-sci.
right.
I'm an expert
No,
right there.
poli-sci doesn't do stuff like that. It's just the,
I got mine.
all right, resolution reading next week
Okay.
to accept the sign.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Lager, to make sure that is.
Yeah, one reading resolution. I'm not 100% sure, but I think so.
Well, okay,
Well,
we
I've
still
asked you
have
guys
to
where you want
decide where the place is going.
well, we're going to decide.
No,
We're going to go
somebody
down
else.
there. Somebody else.
Somebody else will.
Field trip?
I only mentioned that. I think the mayor probably should decide where it goes. Muriel, come on.
Muriel Graham, 24 Canterbury. I think the sign is a great idea, but I'm also thinking about the comprehensive plan and the gateways aspect, and wondering whether there isn't a way to temporarily locate this sign somewhere until the whole idea of what we're doing at our gateways gets addressed. You know, finding a permanent home just a few weeks before we start working on the comprehensive plan seems a little out of order.
Thank you.
So we could move it if we had to.
We can do anything we want. We're the
Oh,
council.
yeah, right.
Okay.
Anything else, Amy?
Oh. Sorry. Anything else for transportation committee? I have no miscellaneous.
No.
All right, the committee is adjourned.
Committee of the whole, who will be leading us tonight?
Debbie will be doing most of it, but I asked the mayor before council started, and he said that the comprehensive plan is has not been amended, so I think I have this, a sense that we will go ahead and put through this ordinance that Debbie's passing around, the Comprehensive Plan Review Commission, in tandem with our acceptance of the plan.
Folks,
Okay.
thanks a lot for coming.
All right, so that will be starting through whatever form that takes. And now Debbie is going to look at the Comprehensive Plan Review Commission. Do you want me to take it over and give it to the mayor or just leave a copy?
Probably an extra one that went that way, because since
do you need?
Bojinka's not here.
I just wondered if the mayor wanted a copy
That
of
went to the
this.
mayor and we'll work on this.
I'll look at the
Okay.
Paul shoulder.
Here.
Okay,
Okay, you got that?
okay, we're good.
We talked about this in the Planning and Development Committee
So you got that, Debbie?
a couple times ago. Yes, we're gonna read through accepting the plan. We're gonna start that through next week.
With this.
There'll be
Adopting.
2 ordinances.
Okay, don't roll your eyes.
When you say the plan has not been amended,
No, it's
the
the
planning
same.
commission.
It's been rearranged, changed from active voice to passive voice, maybe.
And
I'm
those
joking. I'm joking,
substantive
I'm sorry.
changes.
The way I understand it right now is that
Because
it's in its
it's
final,
perfect subjunctive.
it's in its final draft. Melissa's, she says she's ready to burn it onto this tomorrow
So
afternoon.
people who want to see it and find out for themselves, come back and tell us where it's not the same, if the language has changed, can do so.
And then this other piece about the Citizens Commission around the plan, I gave you 2 things. One, these are the, ignore my scribbles because the only copy I had of this I took notes on in a meeting while working with the small group of folks from the neighborhood associations and creating this. But you've got the 2 pages out of phase 2 of the comprehensive plan around performance measurement and benchmarking, and then you have a couple pages out of phase 1 that had the goals and objectives related to performance measurement of the comprehensive plan. We had a small group get together to develop what this review commission, how it might be structured, and I was out of town, so I just before the meeting hand wrote and copied this for you. The purpose of the commission, we may need to refine the language a little bit for the ordinance, but it would be to develop and oversee implementation of benchmarks and performance measurement system, to coordinate citizen involvement and review of progress toward benchmarks and implementation of the comprehensive plan, and to report at least annually to the Planning Commission, the Council, and the citizens of Athens. This commission is proposed to have 7 members appointed by council. They'd be 3-year terms that begin staggered, so that when it's first started off, there'd be several people in a 3-year term, several in a 2-year term, and several in a 1-year term, so that the turnover happens gradually. And there's been some discussion back and forth about who should be on this commission. It clearly can't be as big as the steering committee for the comprehensive plan, because it would just be unmanageable. So I looked at the other city commissions that exist, the Planning Commission, the Tree Commission, the Disabilities Commission, just to look at the size, and we talked this through, thought 7 was a good number, and that we should specify who some of these people are, but maybe not too specifically. So if we put a couple people from the neighborhood associations, 1 from the business community, 1 person from OU, our preference is whoever is doing the same kind of thing that Paul Longo does around performance measurement, who has that expertise. 1 person from Planning and Development Committee of Council, and 2 other citizens. And then the mayor or the mayor's designee would be a non-voting member, but just to keep communication going. So this is the proposal to work on implementation of the plan, actually making sure that we get clear, measurable benchmarks in place around the goals and objectives, and that there's a way that citizens get information and can give input on how we're doing on the plan. Part of the reason for having someone from the business community and someone from OU specifically be on there is that in the comprehensive plan, there are a lot of different people who are responsible for doing things. The steering committee referred at one point to doers in the plan. And it's not only the city, but there are a lot of collaborations and partnerships that are really necessary for us to work together to achieve the goals and objectives in the plan. So it's important that we have a way to keep communication going among all the different partners. So, Nancy?
I think we ought to include, let's see, annual reports at least, and some kind of archive kept of the meetings, and the meeting should be open, and the minutes of the meeting should be on the website, so that people know. I also think that the Planning and Development Committee person, who is clearly a member of the agency, the evaluated, should not be an evaluator, so I'd like to move the Planning and Development Committee member down to ex officio and add the county planner and make 3 other citizens. That's just my proposal. I know we've talked about, I'd actually like to see 4 neighborhood association members, but I think the county planner would help if he'd be willing to do it because he has that. Our own planner would certainly be but I think that, I can't think of another committee member where a member of council that we appoint where we're voting members except for the plan initially. But I mean, now we're down to evaluation. It would be just sort of like me evaluating one of my own, a research article that I wrote. I mean, I just can't, being on a committee that did it, I shouldn't do it. I should be one step back.
Okay.
Quit laughing at me, Amy.
Do you think if we had a city planner in place that they should be on this? You're saying
Yeah,
no?
ex officio, yes.
Okay, so in other words, anybody who's involved in planning from the city side should really be on it.
And I said county planner also, because I think that's
Okay.
important as well. If he'll do it, I don't know if he has time.
He'd be a voting member?
No, ex officio, is that?
The county and the city?
In the city, yeah.
Okay, so we've just swelled the numbers? Of this
No, we're
voting?
down to 6, and it's an
Okay.
uneven number unless we add another citizen.
Okay.
But I don't want to.
No, I like the idea. I'm just,
You're
let's
just
try and get it
easy
straight.
going. I give you trouble on signs.
Okay. Carol?
I'm just a little bit concerned about the wording of the first bullet. It sounds like a service safety director to me. And I'm wondering, how it fits in the total organization of the city. I mean, this commission really isn't going to be implementing the plan as such.
I think that it's not implementing the plan, it's implementing a benchmarking and performance measurement system. So a way for citizens to measure how the city's doing in making progress toward the goals. So actually coming up with a method for ongoing performance measurement. We said we're going to have X number of feet of sidewalk, by a certain date, then some system where the city is going to actually provide that information to citizens, and citizens can say, great, you did that, or, well, we understand that there was some other crisis in the streets and the money had to go there that year. Just some way for consistent communication about how we're doing so it's not that the commission would be doing the tasks of the plan, they'd be putting together a system for.
And I think I understood that. It's just the wording concerned me a little, and maybe run it by Gary and see if that says what we think it's saying.
Okay.
If you cross out implementation, develop and oversee benchmark
The performance measurement
yeah.
system.
If you cross out implementation, then
Maybe, oversee
Okay, Amy
the
and then
development.
it's already in the bottom.
So the idea then is to provide like a progress report for the citizens,
Right.
just to kind of keep up with what's going on with the comprehensive plan, and that would be provided annually, like this.
But creating that system of ongoing performance measurement isn't just, doing like an annual report. So it may, in some cities, there are systems in place where, people can, it would be saying, okay, we need to collect the data that's available. We have a lot of data about work that's done in the city through the weekly reports, the weekly activity reports, and part of it would be making information easily accessible to citizens, making sure people know what's actually happening and what the goals are and how things fit together. So it's not so much a report that would be written up and sit on a desk, but figuring out how citizens can interact and really be part of keeping the plan alive and happening.
So more like an updating system, updating the citizens on the comprehensive plan.
The benchmarks anyway.
Right.
Reported.
Right. And performance measurement, Paul Longo was on the steering committee and, talked about this a lot, that it's a lot more dynamic system than most of us are used to thinking of when we think about evaluation.
Okay.
So it's not a one-time kind of
Right.
assessment, but an ongoing way for people to hold us accountable for doing our jobs.
Sure. Okay.
I think Paul was in there and then Carol.
Okay, I was looking at, again, being on the steering committee at that time and listening to Paul Longo for long periods of time. I looked at this as partially a report card, but also the idea of getting a system in place where we could measure things continuously, whether it's as little as about how many miles the street sweeper does, or how many pounds of garbage are collected, or how many citizens are doing this or that, or how much sidewalk is being developed. It also gives able to say, are we getting towards the Athens 2020 plan? How far are we going along with it? As well as how much they can plug in and help as well. Because I think Longo was really talking about participation all along the process. So it doesn't sit on the shelf, it is interactive at all points. And that's what, how to formalize that. I think last year the neighborhood associations actually got up and talked about doing a report card. Was it longer than last year? Probably longer than last year. So that was part of the concept there, that we would be getting feedback, and they'd be supplying it in one sense, not just us.
Just back to my other point, I think Nancy's suggestion might do it. Just change the word implementation to development of benchmarks and performance measurement system. So they're not out there, building things and doing it. Although.
And there were a lot of sections inside the comprehensive plan about this type of stuff. We did have whole sections of just besides this, we had a matrices in there about that. There was matrices generated by all the subcommittees on where there's a number of trees put in or a number of businesses going in. So there's actually a lot of information out there at this point in terms of how to do this. But the question is gathering that information, putting it in one place, and putting a measuring stick to it.
So, I will tighten up the language and email it around to everyone, including Gary, with some feedback. But I think we're in pretty close agreement. If we get the language right, we should be good to read this next week.
I want to thank you.
That's exciting. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, because it's they always say, if you have something you need to have done, give it to somebody who's busy. So thank you for doing that.
So give all our work to Debbie, is that what
Yeah, exactly. It's going to all fall on her shoulders. There we go.
That should not.
And it's
Elections.
we are done. We're done.